thing I think to emphasize here is that actually it's not so much and we've suspected this for some time, and if you're a practitioner, you kind of know this by intuition. The model itself is not the relevant component that drives performance for these systems like Claude Code or OpenClaw, etc. There's a model that needs to be in these agentic systems. However, the real IP in these systems is actually not the model. It's this, what's called the agent harness around the model, right? It's that orchestration of how is memory handled? How do you connect to tools? How do you persist things over sessions? How do you wake the agent up? How do you point to certain information? How do you give context? All of that is what we would call the agent harness. And it's really that kind of lines of code that was released by Anthropic, even though they didn't release the weights of their model. That's why I think this is so, it's one of the reasons why I think this is so interesting, Chris, is a year ago, we would have kind of been shocked and amazed if someone leaked model weights, and that would like give us everything we need to know about their IP, right? We have the model weights, we can reconstruct it, we have their model. Here, it doesn't really matter if we have the model weights of the actual Opus model or whatever Claude Anthropic model, because all of the IP is in this agent harness around the model, which means I don't have to use an Anthropic model. I could use whatever model I want. If I'm putting the right agent harness around it, I can do extremely powerful things, which is why this is such a leak and why it's so impactful, because that agent harness is where the IP is.
Yeah, I think, in a broader context, we have actually been kind of saying what you just said in different words for a long time now. We've always pointed out that, while, modeling the functionality of different models has been increasing steadily. We've been reporting on that as we go and talking about these models. But, we've said many, many times, it's still software. It's still software architecture, and the model is one component in a larger architecture. And to your point, much of the rest of the architecture is in the harness that we're talking about, and therefore that's why the IP is so critical. And especially when you consider the fact that once we crossed that threshold of kind of Opus 4.5, getting to a point where it was really flipping the entire developer world over on its side in terms of how people productively created software. And at this point, 4.6 came out early into the year. OpenAI has pushed forward with new models, and there will be many open source models coming out as well that are able to do every bit on that side. So it kind of points at the models are, as that progression goes, the models are becoming less and less important, because there are going to be many of them that can do the same capability. And so these harnesses, as we move out, in kind of where they're at now, but as they evolve into their edge harnesses and cloud harnesses and all sorts of different agent capabilities, this is huge. And this is a turning point. So if folks are not paying attention to that, I think they're kind of missing the story. I think the reporting on the model is a time past at this point to some degree.
Yeah.